So I'm gonna get into the ZBrush side, and let me just clean this thing up and start doing some examples here. Oh, before I do this, let me just go back here and find my folder with the skin. So those are some skin shots I took at work this week, and this is basically like my hands and the hands of some friends and other stuff. So this is from my hand, and I took with a macro lens. So you look from distance and you get like those very interesting patterns on top of the hand. Of course, I'm an old man, so you're going to see a lot. If you look at my son's hand, you're going to be much less than that. But I'm going to go like really close here, and I'm going to show the structure of this thing. And you're going to start seeing like some very alien stuff. So you see, like, we always think like, oh, the wrinkles are forming, are basically like the smallest part of the structure here, the wrinkles. But when you get really close and you start seeing this pattern, it's almost like a tile that goes on top and in between every single one of those structures here. So, and also there is a very interesting form that almost like looks like pillows. That's what I was talking about, the volume of the wrinkles. You see, like it's from the top of my hand. It's a place where it doesn't have a lot of movement in the sense of compression in here, but still you have this very interesting structure that repeats all over the place. That's basically like all those forms colliding with each other and forming, heavy volume. This is the top of the hand. And then you get to some other parts. Let's see, still hand. And you get to the finger right here. Again, the structure is it's right there. You can see like the evident stuff. But then when you start looking close, you get this micro bump on top of it. And if you look close, it's not like a random bump. It's almost like little scales. If you look at the, some kind of like, or even like some kind of like a dry ground, it's like when it's a very dry season, you get all those cracks. And also, this is a great example of, if you are working with subsurface scattering, looking how the light scatters and penetrates those wrinkles and forms a very, very waxy structure. So when you look at, basically like in a macro picture like this, everything looks very waxy, and then when you start getting a little bit further, the whole impression that's waxy looking, you start getting going away, because you get into the bigger forms and things like that. But if you are looking for really reproducing the skin quality, trying to reproduce skin quality on the render, you have to look at those macros as an example of how extreme the subsurface is, in fact, in the skin, but it's just like a very, very tiny. The way that the light spreads is not like huge. It's basically very concentrated right there. The way that light travels, it's very, very scattery when it's small like this, but then it gets a little less scattery. So that means that the scale of the scatter is going to have to be somehow small to represent the solid forms when seen from distance. But then anytime you get a little bit closer, you have this much more waxy looking. So this is a good case study for skin. So this one here is from my friend's arm, actually. And then the pattern here is so much different from the other pattern. I don't know if you guys can see in there. It's basically like all those almost like perfect squares. So like I said, it looks like it's very random when you look from distance. But then when you look like in a macro lens like this, you start seeing that it actually has a very almost like a precise structure in it, and the way that it forms is always the same. So although like from distance it looks random, it has a structure in there. Same thing here for the arm, chin. If I go like close to the chin right here, you can see this form here. It's very interesting. So this is the structure of the pores of the skin. And although it looks like it's kind of random when seen from distance, when you look from close up, it's basically like it's very rhythm. you see like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You know, it kind of like has some kind of order, some kind of lines that you know, connect them all. And at the same time, you have this very pillowy kind of structure. So the pore itself is not a hole, and that's it. It is a hole in there, you know, there's a depression in there, but then it forms this kind of pillowy structure. You can see the rays right here. So around each one of those pores, you see those little rays, and they actually go and connect to the next one. That's why I got this reference here, just to show you this is a couch, right? And that's basically the structure for each pore that I just showed you guys. You know, it's this depression right there, although we don't have that one unless you have a blackhead. And then you have like those rays that go all the way from there, you know, and they connect to each other. So that's basically the structure of the skin right here. That's why I got that one right there. So going further, let's see. I got some interesting ones. Okay, so nose. So you saw the you know, the difference already between the skin of the arm that I showed before, right there, that was all cracked like that, like very squarish, and then the structure of the skin of the face that's very pillowy like this, like the pore is very pillowy, and then we have the nose with all the blackheads in there. That's much more smooth than the you know, from the cheekbone that I just the cheeks that I just showed you. So although it kind of has similar structure when seen from distance, it's much more smooth. Those rays that start from each one of the pores are not that evident anymore. And they are very micro details. It's basically, when you look from distance, it's almost like it's a much more smooth surface. Of course, when you get older, then this structure is going to start crack just as the other parts of the face. But then, in this case here, it's almost like smooth, right? So, and this is the chin. So on the chin, you start getting back to that structure that we saw on the cheeks, right? Having some, you know, like there's the hole in there, and then there's those rays. But then here, those rays start getting much more strong in relation to the pore. The pore in the, you know, it's like unlike in the cheeks, when you had the pore very well defined and very faint kind of indications of those rays going around. In here, they become like much more evident, and they start connecting with each other, and they form this very interesting cracked surface. So it becomes a pattern that's basically, you know, every single pore connecting to the other next pore, and then having this whole structure build on top of it. So all of a sudden, you start seeing, like, you know, a much more structured kind of cracked surface, and then of course over time, those are going to combine into bigger chunks, and then you have you're going to start seeing like this kind of like a brain structure, right? Start almost like looking like a brain, you know, when they start getting together and mushing each other in there. So and then we have the neck in here. That's a different structure. You know, here you have like this directional lines. So you have the cracks that we just saw in the chin, but we don't have the pores that evident anymore. It's basically just the cracks. So we don't see the pores, and we have this directionality. So if you start looking, you see these lines going the same direction here, right? It go all the way around the neck, and then as you get older, of course, you're going to start seeing they combine in clusters. And then you start seeing those bigger forms compressing each other and forming those bigger wrinkles. I'm sorry. So here, this is Sunny. Sunny is my friend at ILM. And then I took some pictures of his ear as well, because the ear is an interesting thing. We are talking about here, of course, we don't need you guys to sculpt every single pore. But it's interesting to understand what's in there, because one thing is to work based on, you know, an impression, and that's basically what we have in real life, right? Like we walk and we see people all the time, and we have an impression that that ear is very smooth because it's shiny, and we have the impression that the lips have all those rays that cross vertically, nothing horizontally, because that's the impression we have, because we don't stop to really look closely to see how those structures are. But since we are doing this class in a way that we want to understand what's in there in order, even if you want to simplify later on, it's important to know what's in there. So the ear, normally we have an impression that's a very, very smooth surface, and then it's kind of fuzzy when it gets in here, and then it's a little fuzzy on the top, and then here in the middle is probably very, very smooth. But then you take a macro picture of it, and you start seeing things very, very differently. So right here, for example, this is the corner, like the very edge of the ear right there. And you see how many cracks you already have in there. Again, you don't see the pores anymore. It's basically just the cracks. But they are like, you know, kind of like star structures. So you see like those rays going in different directions and connecting with each other and breaking again. So even here, you know, this part that's like so shiny, it's because of the wrinkles are not that deep in this area. That's why it causes this kind of like shiny impression that we have. But in fact, there is wrinkles like everywhere, you know, everywhere, like some, you know, hair here and a lot of wrinkles in the border right here, the border of the ear. And the only way to see this stuff is with the macro photography. Of course, if you're going to be doing this as an exercise for, you know, the creating super realistic stuff, we're going to be interested to do this. If not, then of course just understanding a little bit of the form and the difference between different areas of the face, we're going to be able to create different brushes that we can use just for those specific areas. This is my neck, so the structure here is slightly different. It kind of like have a little bit more of a wavy thing. So you start seeing things going up and down, and then the other way too. And then you create those eye shapes in the middle, you know, and then of course, like, because my neck, the wrinkle is going to go always this way, so it flows this way. But the structure is very interesting because it has this kind of like, you know, arches that go all the way like this. Let's go back here, neck, let's go back of the ear, and then the eye. So right here you can start seeing as well, it's a different kind of texture, right? Because here, close to my nose, you know, the nose has already a different structure in there and a lot of other nasty stuff, of course, and boogers. But that's not important now. What's important is, like, again, you know, the structure here is basically the same structure as Sunny's face, right? So it's those pillows. So you have like the pore in the middle and then those little rays that connect with the other ones. And then when you start getting close to the eye, everything changes. And then all of a sudden you don't see the pores anymore. It's basically just the cracks, and they get smaller and smaller. And then, of course, you have this smaller structure, but then all is combined with the bigger forms. Everything in the human body you're going to find is always basically the same order, right? Like it's those bigger forms defining the whole thing. This, you know, these big wrinkles here defining the, you know, the eye bag right here and the form of the eye underneath. But then we have like the other ones crossing right here, defining smaller forms, and then the microforms on top of the whole thing. So that's basically the, you know, the study of the primary, the secondary forms, and the detail on top that some people call tertiary form. So this is basically the way it's going to work for everything in the human body. And then just in the last two ones here is basically the forehead. Again, the same kind of like a pillowy structure, very ordered. If you look, it's not as random as we imagine it is, so it has some kind of order because they always connect with each other. There's always like a chain in there, similar to what we saw in the cheeks, but then it's slightly different. You know, it's a little bit shallower than the pores in the cheeks, and of course, a lot of stuff going to vary from person to person. But I mean, the difference here is very interesting when you start getting, you know, from the forehead to the eyebrows. The structure, instead of like having all those cracks right there, it gets a little bit smoother, and then the pore is more evident. But then when you go to the side here, then the pore disappears, and it just becomes like almost like just cracks on the side. So it's very interesting for you guys to start looking at those things and observing on the mirror, and understanding that the skin is not a, you know, it's not a single thing. It's very different between different areas. And if you look at torso and legs and the palms of your hand, and everything is so different. So everything has an anatomy in itself. So people are concerned about, you know, it's like studying anatomy of the muscles and things like that, and the form, define the form. But then if you're looking for realistic skin and ways to understand how the skin behaves and changes, it's very important to start studying this kind of form. You know, it's like how the whole skin around the body has different characteristics. So enough with this stuff. Oh, this is just an example of like elbow. So elbow, again, you know, like very different structure. Almost no visible pores in there. It's basically just becomes just like wrinkles, and then they become finer here, and a little bit more like a brain in here. There's all those. This is like from Martin. So yeah, so just some examples. If you have the chance to take some macro pictures, if you have a macro lens, awesome. If you don't, I mean, my plan is to actually make those pictures available. I can put like in an FTP, if not for Visual Area, even my personal website, so you guys can use them to produce alphas or to just study, you know. So I'm gonna make those available